Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Time for episode 20 of Just Take 3 with me, Andrew Musgrove, and
me, Sam Mulliner, the 20th and final episode brought to you by NordVPN.
very good there. Look at that, straight in with the NordVPN.
Get it out of the way.
Drop. Final one for now. We may bring it back in the future, but the last series we did, Just Get in the Bin, and it did episode 20. So it seemed like the right opportune moment to bring this one to a close on episode 20. And as Sam mentioned, it is sponsored by NordVPN. So hit that link in the podcast description box to get a discount offer on your NordVPN plan. It is very much worth it, and keep yourself protected, especially at this time of year as well. You doing well, Sam? You good?
Yes. All good. Would be better. Well, depends. When's this going out? Is this after Leicester?
Out, yes, it'll go on Sunday morning. So what's the score going to be?
Okay, then I'm nervous regarding our cup tie against Brentford.
Right, but what has the score been against Leicester City?
Just been asked this on NFTV actually, and my logic is that similar of Brentford, which obviously was completely wrong. Well, it was right, but the result turned out the wrong way. I thought Brentford would come at us and not low block us, which was correct, but I thought that would suit us, enabling us to win, which was very wrong. So I'm going to Control-C, Control-V this one, and copy and paste my opinion and think that Leicester are on a bit of a high, forward-thinking new manager. Maybe they won't come to St James's and try and low block us. They'll maybe open up and allow us to hit them with an attack or two, hopefully resulting in a Newcastle win.
Fingers crossed you are correct. I'm not so confident.
Because if I'm wrong, the pressure is on Eddie Howe going into this.
Yes, most certainly so, and that's why we're going to kind of just stay away from modern day Newcastle United, unless you have picked Eddie Howe for the next category, the final category, as Sam says for now, and it is managers with a twist, and the twist being, ladies and gents, that for the last 19 episodes, other than the episodes about home shirts or change shirts, the categories have all been about watching highlight reels on this mystical bit of technology that we've somehow found on this desert island. Whereas for this final episode, the managers we choose are going to be on the island with us. That's the twist, ladies and gents. So it might not necessarily be the managers that you think we would have picked had it been our favourite managers or the best managers, because I have gone for managers who I think would be quite handy on a desert island. Sam, have you put as much thought into this as I have?
Well, yeah, that's what I was hoping to clarify with you. So this is obviously not our favourite managers, not the ones that have done really, really well, not necessarily have done really, really well for Newcastle. This is, you're in a kind of Ray Mears, Bear Grylls kind of situation, Castaway, but you get the three managers of Newcastle that you so choose. Okay, that's the so that we've got that confirmed now.
I just thought we'd try and bring a bit of humour to the world of Newcastle United, because it is a little bit doom and gloom. It might be even worse by the time this goes out on Sunday morning. Hopefully it's not. But I was sitting there thinking, how do we end it on a kind of a high? How do we end up on a bit of a different note to what's gone in the previous 19 episodes? And I thought it's just a nice little twist, because we can bring a bit of humour, and obviously then we will talk about the managers on our lists and whether we actually did like them or not, or whether we thought they were hard done by, and so on and so on. Would you like to go first?
Okay, I'll try. I've not got my third yet, so I'm very much doing this on the fly. I've nailed down two, but I'm my third one is going to be, I'm going to think aloud and come to a decision right at the end, I think. Right. My first one, I've gone for Graham Souness.
He's my first pick.
So so we're thinking the same. He's a guy, obviously, yes, we're staying away from his ineptitudes and the way he destroyed Sir Bobby's team and bringing in Amdi Faye and Babayaro et al. But, I think he would be good in a survival situation. Obviously, rough and tough, kind of a no-nonsense player, quality player at that. I think he'd be good in the wild. I think he'd have no issue in catching a ball.
Yeah, that's why he's on my list. You would send them out to get the ball, to get the supplies. You probably have to make him set up camp at the opposite end of the beach, though. I imagine he'd be quite a feisty neighbour, and I don't think you'd want that in your face. But in terms of being the man who's throwing the spear and going out and catching fish, and as they say, the ball, all for it.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be too bad. I mean, once we'd got the, the inevitable discussion out the way regarding, Lauren Robert, Craig Bellamy, and all the other players he sold and signing of, he can explain the story of how he wanted to sign Nicholas Anelka instead of Michael Owen and Luis Boamorte instead of Albert Luque. We got all that out of the way. And, how we were so close to winning something, maybe should have got the win or at least a positive result over in Lisbon. But I think it'd be all right in a survival situation once you get that kind of once you've cleared the air.
It would depend on personalities. So what kind of personality would you be on the island? Because I have just recently watched Lost, and you've always got that clash between Jack, who's the doctor, and Sawyer, who's how shall we say, not the most well-behaved gentleman, and John Locke as well, the man who was in the wheelchair and landed on the island, suddenly he's in the wheelchair. Three massive personalities clashing, essentially because they all want to be leaders of the camp. And I feel like Graham would want to be a leader of the camp. He'd want to be making the decisions. So could you handle that, Sam? Could you be told by Graham Souness where you're going to go fishing, where you're going to go and get the water, and you have to go and get the firewood?
Yes, I could. I wouldn't have an issue with that. Look, I don't think I'd have any issue in speaking up if I thought what he was doing was wrong. But, debate is healthy. There's nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't have any issue with following orders from Graham Souness. He's a marshal. He's a general, isn't he? We saw that in his playing career. He was relatively successful as a manager, although he wasn't successful in any way, shape, or form at Newcastle United. I wouldn't have any issues in aiding Graham Souness if he wanted to be camp leader. This is a very weird discussion to be having.
It's different, isn't it? I mean, we could talk about his time at Newcastle, and obviously he comes in and replaces Sir Bobby Robson, a very, very bizarre appointment. Blackburn were not, by any stretch of the imagination, doing well in the Premier League, and for whatever reason, Souness appealed to Freddie Shepherd. The appointment was made. He was in the stands as Blackburn actually beat Newcastle United at St James's Park, which was a funny little note on his kind of first appearance at St James's. But he only won 36 games in 83. So that shows you how bad his record really was.
And the majority of those, I'm guessing, would have been with Sir Bobby's team.
Yeah, and he spent a lot of money. He spent around £47 million in his time at Newcastle United, which
he would argue he didn't spend that.
No, but he was handed the pleasant, and yes, he would argue maybe he didn't get the final say. But as we say, he's a feisty character. I don't imagine he sat back and didn't really give his input into these players that arrived, Michael Owen, Albert Luque. And as you said, you've listed a couple of names he wanted instead, but he was relatively backed in the transfer window. Probably a little bit hard done by with injuries, you would say. Michael Owen, Scott Parker, Luque, Emery, and there was Stephen Taylor, Kieran Dyer, Stephen Carr, Shola Ameobi, and Graham Moore all suffering injuries for long periods of time. So was he hard done by, do you think, with the injuries that the club did suffer at that time?
I think towards that FA Cup semi-final, definitely, weren't we? Because we were never really competitive in that game. We were missing a lot of players. Obviously, wasn't it 3 days after Lisbon as well? So our season kind of finished in the space of 3 days, which was very disappointing. But yeah, we were a bit down to the bare bones. But yeah, I think it was the completely wrong appointment to start with. You're following, I mean, whoever followed Sir Bobby Robson, who was just an absolute legend of the human race and just so utterly adored by not just our fan base, but the wider footballing fraternity, was always going to be such big shoes to fill. And I didn't like that appointment whatsoever. It was incredibly underwhelming. The fact that we had to go and pay Blackburn compensation for this guy as well is just ridiculous. I would be happy with Souness though on the desert island, so long as he didn't bring his team with him. I don't want to be alone on a desert island with Dean Saunders. I mean, catering on a desert island is hard enough without bringing Phil Bullsma with you as well, which just would make things impossible in that sense. I just, Souness on his own would be fine.
Yeah, you'd be safe with Souness, I think. He'd be the leader who would definitely be getting the food and the supplies. But yeah, his time at Newcastle didn't go to plan at all. His last job in the game as well. So there you have it. Did Newcastle United put an end to his managerial career? Had he had enough?
Yeah, well, clearly. And there's been a couple like that, hasn't there, really, who have struggled to get back into the game since leaving Newcastle. But yeah, it was surprising, really, that soon. Well, or was it surprising? Because he didn't do a good job, did he, Souness? And then obviously he got the move into punditry, which once you're in there, you either use it as a shop window to get back into management, or you are settled for a job until you decide to retire from that game altogether, isn't it? So he's well on his way, still in punditry, really, with on the radio.
I think he's a great pundit. I really do. He obviously gets a bit of stick when he covers Newcastle United because I think of the job he did here. But as a pundit, got no issue with him. I think he calls it as he sees it. Obviously, his comments on Newcastle United, he often bangs on about the expectation of fans, which is a totally misguided opinion. And obviously, he's been on the receiving end of a lot of stick, so he's the man who's obviously going to portray that opinion. But I do think he's wrong on it. But in terms of calling the on the pitch action, I think he's spot on everything in the end of every time.
Yeah, and there was a degree of expectation when he was Newcastle boss, because we just had a great time under Sir Bobby Robson in the Champions League, getting great guns in the UEFA Cup after that. We had a fantastic team, and we were close. We were close to achieving something, and we did have expectation then, something that he was never, ever going to live up to, because he was signing players that were just... so obviously taking Owen out of that and Luque, which was obviously Freddie Shepherd's big thing, the signings he made were very, barring maybe Emre, who had performed at European level for Inter Milan, the other signings he made were just so average and just so mid-table. It was unreal.
Do you want to name a few? Who are you talking about? Boom Song?
I already have. Andy Fay, Boom Songs, Babayaro. There's plenty out there that just weren't good enough.
Did he sign Stephen Carr? I think he signed Stephen Carr, didn't he? Which wasn't a bad sign. I'm sure Bobby wanted Babayaro as well, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I get your point. I get what you're saying. So there you have it. I will bring you my second pick, as you've taken my first pick. And I've gone for Chris Hughton. Simply because I feel like he's a man who just gets on with the job. No complaints, and he can handle pretty much anything. And we saw that when he took over Newcastle United and he got them promoted back to the Premier League. You know, that job to begin with was tough. Newcastle obviously has been relegated from the Premier League in horrendous fashion. Mike Ashley was not flavour of the month at all. The players didn't know if they were coming or going. You had that horrendous defeat to Leeds Orient in the pre-season. It was not a good place to be. It was not a good dressing room. Chris Hughton, caretaker, then permanent manager, did a superb job in gelling the players together and taking Newcastle back up to the Premier League without really getting the backing of the board. You know, if I remember correctly, we've spoke about Danny Simpson coming in, but there weren't too many signings that summer. More than Howe ended up coming on loan. But in terms of getting backing from the board. Didn't really get it. He did have a decent squad, though. That's that the likes of Kevin Nolan and what have you. But still, you would like to have thought he would have got a bit more in terms of a transfer budget. It wasn't to be. Goes up, does a decent enough job in the Premier League, again, without really much backing. Works hard, gets his head down. I think he's a man who puts out fires, proves that. That's what you
Beat
need on a
Sunderland
desert island.
5-1.
Yeah. Well, actually, the season he was sacked, it's funny. It shows a little bit of resemblance to Eddie Howe's current season, if I'm being totally honest. When you look at the numbers, he lost 3-1 to West Brom in the December and was sacked straight after. 11th in the table. Yeah, 11th in the table. He'd won 5 out of 16 games that season, beating Arsenal. He'd beaten Sunderland, but he had gone on a run of 5 without a win before he got sacked. So there's a little comparisons there, funny enough, held in such high regard as Eddie Howe is. But hopefully Eddie Howe doesn't go the same way Chris Hughton does. But Chris Hughton was sacked. It didn't go down well at all. But you know what I loved about it? Held his head up high. Maybe grumbled behind closed doors. I think there was a strongly worded statement from the LMA. It was a terrible decision to sack him. I know Pardew ended up getting Newcastle into you and what have you, but I just thought Hughton was treated so badly, but he never, ever took it out on the club or the fans. He just kind of said, all right, I move on. And I just feel like his calming presence on a desert island when you're probably panicking that you're falling 30,000 feet out of the sky and somehow survive, but there's no way of getting home. You'd need that. I think he'd calm you down when you were having those moments of panic.
Yeah, I think the word always associated with Chris Hughton's time at Newcastle is dignity, with the way he handled himself. I think the comparisons you made there with Eddie Howe are okay, I suppose. Are they relevant? I don't know.
Well, I'm just talking in terms of this. Just in terms of the numbers, I'm not. I mean, obviously, you can't really compare squads and stuff and what have you. And there's obviously,
I think the point is that the expectation is a lot higher with Eddie Howe's side, which arguably would put him more under pressure. I don't think the expectation was really there for Chris Hughton. I think had we have finished 15th, 16th, and just survived, pretty much everyone would be happy with that. I don't think at the time there was any sort of, whilst there was a few really poor performances. That West Brom game was pretty naff. We got completely battered at Bolton as well, 5-1. There was a few like that, yeah, sure. But the expectation wasn't there then. The investment wasn't there then. And I don't think there was any grumbles of any discontent for Chris Hughton at the time, which was evident when he was sacked and there was uproar, really, wasn't there? I don't think there's any really discontent surrounding Eddie Howe, but I think the pressure is there. Whereas it shouldn't have been really for Chrissy Hughton. But yeah, I'm glad you've chosen him, because I was absolutely apoplectic with rage when he was dismissed. I was fuming.
I think everybody was. I've been reading some comments. Sorry, Souness. I've been reading some comments from people, and they just couldn't quite believe it. You know, Sol Campbell hit out. It makes no sense. He was a guy who's done an unbelievable job. Said Sol Campbell. Kevin Nolan, who was captain at the time, said the players were shocked by the decision. We are all upset that Chris is going. He's helped a lot of the lads here with their careers when he was coach and then manager. We will never forget our promotion from the Championship last season, and we have to do what he told us to do. Stick together, make sure we keep the unity that Chris has built up and get through this difficult period. It goes without saying that we were shocked with the announcement. Yeah, we were all shocked, I think.
Yeah, we didn't really have that unity in the squad again since probably Howe's side in the 4th place finish season, really. There wasn't a great deal of unity since then up until Howe's tenure, which is, I don't know, surprising. I think Rafa held it together, but I don't think there was that sense of tightness and unity there. There was a bit, but probably not to the extent the character that was displayed by Hughton's side, particularly getting up from the Championship. And after overcoming that ordeal at Leyton Orient in pre-season, to be able to sort that mess out and come back and win a championship title and then go up, and he would have kept us up. I don't think we were ever really in danger of relegation that season, despite everything. Losing Andy Carroll as well was obviously a big loss at the time. But I loved Chris Hughton. I kind of get the opinion. I don't think he appreciates just how adored he is still at Newcastle. There's a lot of respect and a lot of admiration for Chris Hughton still. I'd like to see him back at St James, actually. In the director's box or whatever. I on the pitch at half time or something. I think there needs to be a bit of a proper bit of a thank you for Chris Hughton, because things could have got really bad really quickly, akin to what happened with Leeds. We could have been down there for years and years if it wasn't for Chris Hughton.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And obviously since then he went on to manage Brighton, Nottingham Forest. I think he went to Norwich as well, Birmingham City. So he's had a decent managerial career. Last in charge of Ghana. I think he's out of work at the moment, but he's just a very humble guy, down to earth. And you're right. I'm not sure he does appreciate how much he's loved up here and held in such high regard. But it's, he's earned that, really has. And also, he was a decent player as well, actually. People forget that for Tottenham. 297 appearances over a 13-year spell. A very decent enough player. But so Chris Hughton is second on my list. He is second on my list because you've taken my first choice. So who's next on yours?
So I have gone Eddie Howe. And whilst I made the point of not wanting Souness to bring his backroom staff to a desert island, because I have no interest in spending time with Dean Saunders or Phil Boersma, that on the flip side is a positive for Howe, because he will bring Tindall. We know full well Jason Tindall will get anywhere, no matter the location, and desert island is nothing for JT. And Tindall will be there. So it's an extra pair of hands, really, to help out, isn't it?
Okay, I like that thinking, yeah. They do go together, a bit like Ant and Dec, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. I mean, it'd be funny because however Howe arrives, if it's by boat and you run over to the shore and you go to help him off first, Tindall's straight in their head, isn't he? He's the first man off the boat. He's first on the shore.
Oh, yeah. He will be the well. No, in essence, he'll be the first man to arrive and the last to leave, like Mel Gibson in We Were Soldiers, something like that. I think that would happen. Tindall would come into his own in a survival situation, I think, and I think it would be a real treat to have Tindall there along with Howe, who will settle the nerves, and if he has something to say, everyone would listen.
You make us better fishermen, better hunters.
If the S does hit the F, he would improve everyone there. Even Souness's hunting game would go up tenfold. And like I say, if the S does hit the F, then he will be there to kind of assert, and everyone would listen, and then Tindall would be there as well, just to re-emphasise after Eddie had finished speaking.
Yeah, I can see a logic behind that. I think he'd be great on a desert island, be organised, a little bit disciplined. Might have some criticism that he just continues to try the same way to catch the fish. Maybe doesn't really want to change it up. Just keeps repeating it, even though it's not working. But
or spending too much time in the man-made shower.
Yeah, maybe. Who? Tindall?
Yeah, combing his hair in the kind of mirror he's fashioned from stuff.
Yeah, maybe. I would like to think that if they were on a desert island, they wouldn't really care what they look like. They just want to think about surviving.
Tindall would. Tindall would, mate. He'd be loving the tan.
Yeah, well, that's your view. Obviously, Jason Tindall not here to defend himself with your opinion on his love for.
Not criticism.
No?
No, it's not criticism at all. It's I think it's as close to a fact as you could speculate, to be honest. He'd be in his element.
How important do you think Jason Tindall is to help Eddie Howe get through this kind of rocky patch? Again, we are sitting here before the Leicester game, but this is coming out to you after the Leicester game. So we don't know what the result has been. We don't know what the performance has been, obviously, but he is his right-hand man. And it was interesting on that Simon Jordan podcast. He kind of talked about having his whole team with him. And that's why he didn't go to Celtic, because he couldn't get his whole team with him. And if he hadn't got his whole team with him for the Newcastle job, he would have turned it down as well. So clearly he's a man, anyhow, who likes teamwork, who's got his trusted lieutenants, and obviously Jason Tindall heads that up. So how important is it that them two, are together essentially?
I think if you were on a desert island survival situation, you would feel a lot better if you've got your best mate with you. I think that's what it comes down to as well. You having a good assistant. I was going to avoid the pun of saying having a good number two on a desert island, moving on. I think having your mate and having a good working relationship with someone you obviously trust and have a history of achieving. Obviously, the Bournemouth achievement can never be undone. Yes, it kind of ended a bit sourly in the end with relegation, but taking them from League Two to the Premier League or the champion, and then to the Championship or whatever, it's still a mind-blowing achievement for a club of that size. Their stadium is still barely a stadium; it's so small, and they've done it together over a number of years, and I think that would, although it's an extra mouth to feed on a survival situation, I think his positives would outweigh the negatives of bringing Tindall along. Not that he'd have much choice.
Do you think that Jason Tindall is a man who will tell Eddie Howe that he's wrong, that this isn't working? How do you think the dynamic works?
I would hope so, because having that openness and honesty, I think, is crucial, really, when it comes to anything, whether it's work or whatever. You've got having that open and honest and trust in one another. I don't think you need yes men in any walk of life, really. So I would certainly hope that that is there, and I think it is. I would be shocked if it wasn't.
Okay, so we have Eddie Howe plus Jason Tindall as Sam's second choice for visitors to the desert island. My third and final pick then to go alongside Graham Souness and Chris Hughton is Sir Bobby Robson, because I feel like he would be the kind of the blanket that you want, the kind of the warmth that you need to get you through this potentially tragic and horrendous experience on a desert island. A man who has experience, he has leadership, he's funny above all else. He's very, very humorous. And I'm not talking about the gaffes he maybe accidentally made towards the end of his career. I'm talking about, he was just a funny man in general. Like some of the gaffes people talk about were definitely on purpose. And it's that kind of humor I think would just go down an absolute treat in what would be a very, very, very difficult situation when you are stuck on a desert island.
Interesting now, because so Bobby Robson is my absolute hero, but now I've got to try and, for the sake of discussion, kind of got to pick holes in having Sir Bobby in a desert island situation. Would you see him as like a village elder, like a tribal chief sort of scenario, or would he be sort of like not a burden was probably a bit too strong of a word, but what would he add to a survival dynamic?
I think experience, a calm head, bit of leadership, kind of a soft but authoritative voice. I don't think he'd be tracking into the
delegation, essentially, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be tracking into the depths of the undergrowth, but at the same time, I think he would be pulling his weight. I think he would have a go at the fishing. You'd have a go collecting some firewood, But I think he would understand his limitations, and as you say, a bit of delegation and just a kind of an all-round captaincy, really. And then when you get back, a few funny stories to kind of calm your nerves or your concerns about where your days are ending on this island. So yeah, I think he would have a lot to offer, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I
You've
love
got to
Sir
think
Bobby.
as well.
Yeah,
There'd be a lot of interesting characters on this island, and Sir Bobby managed the very best of them, and he courted the respect of the game's very best. So you would have no issue getting Graham Souness in line. I don't think Chris Hughton would need to get into line. We've talked about that, but he'd have no issue. Being the gentle boss, for want of a better phrase. Someone if you cross, my goodness me, you'll be hearing about it. But he's not a shouty man. He manages in an authoritative but respectful and under assuming way, I think would be the right way to put it. You're not having it.
Yeah, would there not be tension though between him and Souness?
No, I think Bobby's a man just to kind of say that, you put it behind me. It is what it is. At the end of the day, it wasn't him, it wasn't Souness that made the decision to sack him. It was Freddie Sherwood. So, it's just football, isn't it? Are you telling me that every time he bumped into Lewis Van Gaal, he was after him? I don't think he would have been. I think he would have shook his hand and said, that's life.
No, I think the issues maybe come from more Souness's side than Bobby's, obviously, because
that's Souness's problem.
I agree. And Souness was the one that didn't do a good job. So Bobby was very much did an incredible job at Newcastle, again, taking us from what would have been relegation under Ruud Gullit to Champions League eventually, after being given time to build a squad with not a lot of financial backing, really. It's always still a wonder that he never signed a player for over £10 million, Sir Bobby, which, when you think what followed with Souness breaking the club record with Michael Owen, it is what it is. But yeah, no, I don't disagree. So Bobby isn't my choice, but I certainly wouldn't be against having him there because, as I say, he's my absolute hero in life. So it's a good pick. It's a good pick, and he's one of, if not my favourite Newcastle manager. So
there we go.
Love him to bits.
Go then, your third and final pick.
So I've been going through. Yeah, so I haven't picked one. Well, I have now, but I've been going through the managers in my lifetime and seeing what they'd be. I've been overthinking it in my head throughout the episode, to be honest. Kevin Keegan, a bit too emotional for a survival situation. Kenny, bit dull. Ruud Gullit, just vacuous, just egotistical. No, thank you. So Bobby, we've discussed, love him to bits. Souness is there. Glenn Roeder, I absolutely loved Glenn Roeder. He'd be close. I love Glenn Roeder. Brilliant guy. I've actually Alan Pardew. As we know from previous episodes, I have a strange sort of admiration for Pards, but then I think he could be one to maybe, like you were saying about your TV show, he could be one where the ego maybe gets a bit better of him and wanting to take charge, and he'd be fighting with Tindall for a mirror. So there's that. So I've gone for Rafa Benitez in the end.
Ooh.
A kind of non-emotional technician focused on the task at hand and wanting to, being able to survive and get away off this island, because it's been 20 weeks we've been doing this now, and that's probably enough.
Well, I think it would go two ways because he did come to my consideration. So meticulous, like unbelievable. He had dossiers on everything when it came to Newcastle United, like a man who did not leave any stone unturned. And in my head, I was thinking, well, he might be the first one to build a raft and cast it off. But if he did do that, he'd be up there, a stick, bit of cloth on a stick, and see which way the wind blows, and trying to work out when the best time was to go and all that. So it'd be down to a T. But on the other hand, he might be a man planning for the future, and he's planning to really up the level of civilization on the place. He's thinking buildings and sorting out a water supply and all that. So is he thinking more long term and meticulous? I don't know. And would the meticulous side get a little bit too much for you as well? Right, Rafa, we're going to go and get some firewood. But have you thought of this? And then you take about 2 or 3 hours to kind of pinpoint the exact route and how much we need to carry to be effective and efficient. I don't know. That's what talked me out of it. I was just thinking, would the meticulous nature of Rafa Benitez be too much in that situation?
No, because if you need firewood, you go and get firewood. No, I mean, look, no, I don't think. I think you've overthought it a little bit with Rafa. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing things properly and taking the emotion out of it. That's what he was so great at, just taking the emotion out of things and being cold, a bit too cold at times, perhaps.
Well, when he lost his rag,
obviously has been criticised.
When he did
get
emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, yeah, he was criticised by some of his ex-players for not being the best man manager, but when you're in a small group like that, like you would be on a desert island, this is, again, weird scenario to be thinking about football managers. But I think he'd get on with Souness and Howe and Tindall very well. And I think I think that'd be a good dynamic between those three kind of entities there. Obviously, Howe and Tindall coming as one package. I think it'd be a good squad dynamic. I really do.
I think Souness might feel a little bit intimidated.
No. I think there'd be a mutual respect there. I think there'd be a good level of mutual respect.
But you are on an island with Howe, Benitez, and Sir Bobby, managers that.
Well, Sir Bobby's not on my island. Well, we're not sharing an island. It's mine.
If we'd all, for the purpose of the point I was making, okay. So still, you've gone Souness, Howe, and Benitez. So he's on the island with two of the most popular managers outside Kevin Keegan and Sir Bobby Robson, something he never managed to do. Would Souness be a little bit put out by that? I don't know, maybe.
No, because there's no football fans on a desert island. This is about survival, isn't it? These are your rules we're abiding by.
I can't see Rafa going after any food, but what I can see is him laying out the plan perfectly to be.
I can see him cooking it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, he'd have his role. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, fantastic stories as well. A little bit of crab cooked on the campfire, listening to Rafa go on about his nights in Madrid or Valencia or whatever. Yes, I can see that. I can see that. And he wasn't as cold as you think he was. He was, he loved football. He loved Newcastle United but he had a lot of warmth as well. Like, he came across maybe a little bit cold, but I think I was fortunate enough to spend a little bit more time with him than yourself, Sam, sitting in press conferences and stuff. And he was a different character. And he just loves football. Absolutely loves football. It's sad in many ways to think that he hasn't got another proper job really since Everton. And I wonder whether the time at Everton's really put an end to his career.
Yeah, I mean, every football manager has a shelf life, don't they? And you either go down the leagues because you can't let go, or you kind of you do what Rafa did and went to China, and you go about things that way. And I don't know, it comes to us all, doesn't it? But yeah, no, Rafa is someone I've not met, but I remember he probably has. With his press conferences, they were always the most interesting to watch of any sort of previous Newcastle manager I can think of. They were always very, very interesting. Like you would always listen. Probably the most interesting one since Sir Bobby, actually. They were really, really good to listen to, and you'd really get a feel for what he was thinking, and he was incredibly had a great deal of wisdom about him. So I admire Rafa. I was never one of those people that wanted him back after he'd gone, because I think things evolve and move on, and you have your time, and that's that. With Keegan being my exception to the rule, which obviously didn't work out well anyway. But I liked Rafa. I liked his kind of steely focus on things and not letting emotion. Obviously, you toe the line. You can be too emotional. Sometimes you have to have that balance, which I think Eddie Howe has got, to be fair. That toes that line well of kind of tunnel vision and emotion.
So there we have it. There are our picks for the Newcastle United managers who we would like to join us on a desert island and aid our bid for survival. Me and Sam both went for Graham Souness. I went for Sir Bobby Robson and Chris Hughton. And Sam went for Rafa Benitez and Eddie Howe, with Jason Tindall coming along in his back pocket as well. Just a little bit of fun and humour, something a little bit different today. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments what you think about our picks. Let us know if you would take any other Newcastle United managers with you on board Desert Island, and why. You know, what attributes do they bring to your survival on the desert island? Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you to Sam, as always. This is the end of Just Take 3. We may bring it back later in 2025, but we're going to launch a new show, as I mentioned a few weeks ago. Haven't come up with a title yet, but we are going to do a weekly kind of Premier League chat, European world football chat, anything that happens within the week to do with football that catches our eye. That's what we'll be talking about. So look out for that to come probably in the new year. With Christmas coming up, we might give Sam a little bit of a break. But do look for that in the new year. It should be fun. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Hope you guys have enjoyed this mini series. And for myself and Sam, we will see you guys very soon.